Hello everyone, my name is Christian Eschbach, and welcome to another one of my album reviews. Okay, so if you're Iron Butterfly, you just released 3 albums. Your last album is your highest charting album, reaching number 3 on the charts. What do you do next? You release a live album. Okay, I don't know if I ever would have bought this album on its own if it came outside of a set, but it is considered part of the official discography. It does officially follow the Ball album, so we are officially going to cover it. Official. All right, here we go. Albums up with In Time of Our Lives. In the Time of Our Lives. In the Time of Our Lives. Why did they open this? Oh my god, I hope this is not how they started their concerts. It really feels like an odd choice to start the live album. To me, it's a little too dark and ominous to start off this album. Like, if I'm going... I mentioned this in a previous review, okay? For a band that is known, is associated with drug culture, especially psychedelic uses. And I'm going to bring this up again. It is disturbing how dark they go. And to open up a live set this dark and dreary, I mean, if you're entering into a trip, whether it be shrooms or acid, with a mindset like this going in, man, things are going to get fucking ugly. Really fucking ugly, man, in your head. Oh, don't want to be in that trip. All right. And then, I've already talked about this song, so I don't need to feel like I have to go heavily in these songs. So, going into the next song, it just continues on with what I'm saying. You got Filled with Fear, okay? And at this point, it has been so dark and disturbing musically live that, like, I mean, this would not be good at all. Like, if you've ever seen the heavy metal cartoon Metalocalypse, okay? When they do the Snakes and Barrels reunion show, and they do I can't remember the name of the drug that they do. It's got that crazy Whamma Bama name, or Alabama Slamma or something like that. I don't remember what the hell the name of it is. But whatever it was, okay? The way that the whole entire band freaks out live on stage with all the hallucinations and everything, that's pretty much what I picture most of the audience doing at this point, man. I mean, we're just talking about like freaking the fuck out. Okay, after that we go into Soul Experience, which is a much needed uplifting track at this point. And you can really hear a change in the crowd. Now, speaking of crowds, this is a live album from 1970. And they do a great job of both capturing the music and just enough of the crowd that it always sounds perfectly live. There is a chance that they overdubbed crowd into it to give it more of a live sound, to boost it up, make it sound a little better. But the whole way around, I really love the production on this for a live album from 1970. Now, obviously, this has been remastered to some degree. But I mean, it says that when I look online on the details, it says that it doesn't officially list it as remastering, but I'm sure they had to have, because the sound on here is way too good for back in those days. You know, like I've listened to The Doors Absolutely Live, which is from the same time period. A couple other albums from back in that time period. Normally live does not sound this good, and this sounds really exceptional. So, you know, if it wasn't for a few points where it sounds like the clapping is off a little bit, out of sync a little bit, which is the only thing that makes me think that it was layered on afterwards and the clapping was from other parts. It's just that. But otherwise, it's fantastic live sounding album. Then you got You Can't Win. When I was listening to this one, especially the live riff, all of a sudden I realized that the opening riff that sounded really familiar, especially the version that was being played on here. And I had to go back and I had to listen to the riff like 5 or 6 times trying to realize where I recognize the riff from. And then all of a sudden it hit me. The Seeker from The Who. And it's really interesting that that's where I would go with it, because both this album And the original one, which You Can't Win, was off of the Heavy album. Heavy was released in 68. This was released in 70. The Who Seeker was released in 71. There is a huge part of me that wonders if they heard Iron Butterfly using that riff in the intro and then turned it into the Seeker. Things like that happen. That was one of the cool things about the 60s and 70s. You'd hear bands, they would hear a riff and take the riff, make it their own, and turn it into something else. You don't get that anymore, and it really is sad. Too much suing and lawsuits and bullshit like that. Another thing I also kind of want to point out at this point is, you know what song's going to be finishing off this album, okay? So you know right away that this album's not going to have a lot of songs on it. That being said, 3 of the songs came directly off of Ball, which, yes, this would have been the album that they were touring for most likely when they recorded this, but not the album that should have been overly represented. There's only 1 song off of Heavy, and this is only 2 years after Heavy was released. And there's only 2 songs off of the In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida album, and you know what one of them is. And the 2 songs that are on here off of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida make sense. I think there really should have been a double live album, honestly. With how long some of their songs run, it really should have been a double live album. With just the songs they had out at this point, they could have pulled off a double live no problem. And I think they should have, because I definitely think that there's songs that should have been represented on here a lot more. Time periods, like the first album should have been represented more than it was. That's really where my big hang up is. All right, we're gonna move on. So as I mentioned, there's 2 songs off of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. The first song is Are You Happy? Okay, now everyone always talks about the drum solo on In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, but as a drummer, and I've mentioned this when I did a review for In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, the album, the drums on the intro to Are You Happy are freaking nuts for the first minute. Like, absolutely bullshit crazy. And what makes it interesting is, as a drummer, I know when you start off a song, when you got crazy drums like that, you know, like on the album, it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of what's going on. When you get into this live version, every drummer has a habit of cranking up tempos. Now, when you're going from you're naturally setting the tempo. You're gonna, by natural reaction, kind of pick it up. So you're going from they, like, seriously, it is normal for a band to increase the tempo 5 to 10 beats per minute above normal, okay? So I don't remember what the exact tempo is on this, but let's say this song starts with a bass line of 120 as its tempo. It is definitely pushing 130 to 145 because they seriously shave more than 30 seconds off the song, and they play the song in its entirety. This particular version clocks in at 4 minutes and 2 seconds, I think. And like the first 15-20 seconds is just introduction. And then they go into the actual song, and it's just like on high octane, man. Like if this had been released late 70s going into the 80s, I would have been saying it was nose candy going on. That's how intense this gets with how fast he play it. And I really dig this live version. I mean, I really dig this live version. And then the album finishes off with In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. Now, as I previously mentioned when I reviewed this album, the live version that's on here and the live version that are on here, they sound very similar, to the point where I honestly thought that they were the exact same track, and that this one just has a slight cut in the section to tweak out a part where the drum solo kind of gets a little meandering and boring. And it's not even the drum solo, it's kind of where it gets into the keyboard section and stuff like that. I really do think that is a possibility, but the mix on here even sounds different than the mix on here, and it could be 2 different shows. I'm not sure. But this one is definitely way more tighter, and I really actually enjoy listening to the live rendition on here. I think the live rendition on here is fantastic. To the point where it's kind of a nice break from what I'm used to, like with the regular version or the other live version, right? And chances are in the future, if I put In-A-Gadda-Da Vida onto mixtapes, and I want to get the whole drum solo and everything of that in there, I'll probably actually use this live version because I just really dig it that much. I think it works that well. And the artwork on here is kind of nifty and cool too. I really kind of dig the hodgepodge with their pictures kind of put in there. I think that's really cool. They really just don't do cool artwork like this anymore for album covers. I mean, you get the odd one that does it, but album artwork just is not what it used to be anymore. It kind of sucks. This is kind of more the boringness of artwork these days, whereas, you don't have the coolness of this. Now, this might be a little too busy, possibly. Maybe even a little too Sgt. Peppery looking, maybe, but I mean, its own little way. Anybody knows what I'm talking about, knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, those are my thoughts, those are my views, my opinions. That's the live album. It is a shame that, one, it is only a single album because they do leave out a lot of songs that I think could have been on there or should have been on there. I also think that maybe doing a live album after 3 albums wasn't enough. They maybe should have waited at least one more album. Who knows? It was a time buyer possibly as well. My thoughts, my views, my opinions, that's where we're going with that, folks. I'm done. Leave me your thoughts and views and opinions in the comment section. That's what that is for. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, the little bell for notifications. There is a link to Patreon down below as well. Peace. Love. Take care.